We want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. This is a fabulous turnout. We've never had more than a little over 60 people at one of these, and we have over 80 signed up for this. I think we have about 8 of them here. So thank you all very much for coming to celebrate this excellent program. We're going to have a demonstration debate in a few minutes to have some fun for the evening. But before we do that, we have some functionary remarks. I'm going to start off with our department head, the Department of Communication, Sean Wall, and then Dean Galanis, and then President Cliff Smart.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. I just wanted to take a few moments to thank all of you. This is really a special event. Over the past 48 hours, we've had former debaters from, I'm going to go ahead and say it, from many, many years ago. They've been very, very supportive of our program. And we also have people who have graduated from MSU just a few years ago. We also have current debaters. I think that some of our current debaters are sitting right here in front of me. But overall, this type of event is very, very important. And as I think I've been the department head now for almost 2 months. And I do want to tell you that one of the reasons that I had a clear decision as far as going ahead and making the move from Texas is because of the debate program and some of the other strong programs that we have, not only in the School of Communication, but specifically in the Department of Communication. So I just want to tell you that as we move forward, this is exactly the type of activity that we want to continue. I want you to know, as the new department head of the program, that I'll do everything I can to advocate for the students and to continue the tradition that we have. A lot of things that we sometimes hear, and this isn't just true in one academic program, we hear it across programs where someone might say, well, what exactly makes you great? What is it about the Department of Communication or the Department of Biology or whatever example comes up? What is it that makes your program unique? Well, I have to tell you that one of the things that makes our department special is MSU debate. And it's, when we talk about recruiting students and also keeping them here at Missouri State, it's not just about recruiting students into the Department of Communication. We have, and some of you are here, we have MSU debaters that go on to work in law firms, to work in successful businesses. We also have students that choose to come to our university because of MSU debate. That might be chemistry majors that work across the university. So the way that we have to continue this is, of course, alumni support and community support, and it starts right here with these conversations and with these relationships that we continue to foster. So I just want to thank all of you for being here, and obviously this is a partnership as we move forward and support the debate program. And before I turn it over to Gloria Galanis, our new dean, I want to publicly recognize Dr. Eric Morris. If we could give him a round of applause for all of his fun work. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Dean of the College of Arts and Letters, Dr. Gloria Galanis.
Thank you, Sean. I love coming to debate functions because you guys are fun and you know how to party. It's been wonderful reconnecting with people I haven't seen in a while, like Tom Black and Bob Pedrazos and Tom Strong. But it's been also fun meeting some legends like Kent Keller. Kent, where are you? Folks, there you go. Folks that I heard about for years and years, but I'm finally having an opportunity to connect with, and it's been fun for me, so thank you for inviting me. Debate is important to Missouri State, and I want to acknowledge how important that is. Those banners indicate the success of the program. We love winning, but debate isn't only about winning. The important things about debate are other things. Participation in debate teaches you how to research and find information. It teaches you how to organize that information and present it in a clear and lucid way, and how to be persuasive in that presentation. And it also teaches you how to find flaws in other people's arguments so you can kind of poke holes in what they're saying. In short, participation in debate teaches you how to think. To me, that is central to the public affairs mission of Missouri State University. We have had that mission for almost 20 years. And our president, President Kaiser, who was the president when we got that mission, I think conceived of that in a very clear way. He said that what you were learning at the university isn't just a private good that's yours alone and that you hoard, but it is a public good. It's part of the commonwealth of what we share together. And I think debate is a manifestation of that. So as you learn how to think, you learn how to apply that good thinking to the public life of your community, and you learn how to improve your community in myriad ways. I think that that's critically important. We have 3 pillars of the public affairs mission. We talk about ethical leadership and cultural competence and community engagement. Those are important. But to me, the heart of it is your participation in the public life of the community and your appropriate participation as good citizens of that community. I think debate is at the heart of what that mission is. I'm so glad that you are having this reunion. I'm delighted that you invited me, and I want to tell you how proud I am that you are not only part of the Department of Communication, which is where I'm a professor, but that you are part of the College of Arts and Letters. Thank you for coming, and it's so good to see you all. Now, introduce you to my already met, Clifton Smart, who is the interim president of Missouri State University.
We lost a great member of our community this week. Mayor Joe Paul Evans from West Plains. I know some of you guys are from West Plains, passed away this week. He was an incredible, huge supporter, not just of Missouri State, West Plains, but of Missouri State. His son and his grandson went to school here. He never got to go to college. And so I thought I would share a little story about Joe Paul, and I'll wrap up here. I'd just done this, was down to West Plains, and you know when you're on the tour, you're meeting dozens of people, and I know I met Joe Paul last summer, and then was back to speak at Rotary, and I recognized him, but I couldn't call his name, and so I just fessed up and I said, sorry, I recognize your face, but I can't call your name. And Joe Paul said, well, hell, my dog can do that. So I would like for us all to lift a glass to toast Joe Paul and his family, and for all he did for the university. Go Bears. I would echo what Gloria has said. And I won't repeat all that, but to talk to the guys and gals that are in school now, if you look around the room, there are people here who are incredibly successful in almost every walk of life. And that's an incredible legacy for you guys. And I think it goes back to what Gloria says, is that you're getting the foundation to do great things. I look around, Russ Keeling, there are people in this room that are very special to me. Russ Keeling, who had the interim job as president for 17 months, and I think the first week I had this came by and shared all the secrets. And I appreciate that. And Jim Anderson, who's been a great encourager in the last 15 months, and friend, and then Tom Strong, who has been my friend and mentor for 20 years, and has been an incredible encouragement to me the last 15 months. I appreciate that, Tom. He's the guy that introduced me to Missouri State University, and began that little seed of connection there. And who would have thought I would have led to this? But I'm sure Tom didn't. But anyway, I appreciate everybody being out here tonight, and lots of people came a long way to celebrate with each other and to remember the good times and the good things that Missouri State has done. We are going to do even bigger and better things in the coming years.
We have big plans for the immediate future and the distant future, but tonight we are celebrating the legacy of this program. And the year 2012 is absolutely a legacy year for the program. Now, we're 2 years too late to celebrate the first time that we sent debaters to another school's campus to go and compete. That happened in 1910. But this year is the 100-year anniversary of the first article of which I'm aware, when the Southwest Standard started reporting on those public debates with blow-by-blow details, including full-on complaints about all the errors in the judging process. 90 years ago, in the year 1922, debate moved from its early legacy as activity with literary societies on the campus to being more of a classroom-based activity, primarily with intramural competition between people in different classes. 90 years since that time. 80 years ago this year, Missouri State ventured off for the first time not to compete in a school versus school singular public debate, but to have our students competing in a debate tournament in Winfield, Kansas. For the first few years in the 1930s, we competed at just a tournament or two per year because that model we figured out was considerably more economical. We got a lot more students who got the training. So that is 80 years ago. 70 years ago, there was no debate team because it was World War II. There was no debate travel that year. 60 years ago, Missouri State first qualified for the National Debate Tournament. Tom Strong, who is in the room, there's Tom. Who competed for Virginia Craig, got to quarterfinals of that tournament, and thus, kind of a very fitting cap for Virginia Craig's very impressive coaching career and a very important transition time, because the first time they qualified for the NDT, an excellent job at the NDT, and also the year of transition from Virginia Craig's nearly 50 years of coaching to the reign of Holt B. Spicer, who began as a coach 60 years ago in 1952. It was for Redlands, which is why there's not a banner about it, but Spike won the National Debate Tournament 2 years in a row, switching places with his partner over who would be the top speaker and who would be the second speaker. So a very impressive legacy. Virginia Craig judged him in the 8th round that year and was so impressed with his debating skill and said, this is the person that we need to have to replace me. So she gave a call to President Ellis and basically said, here's my replacement. Guess what? He's graduating with his bachelor's degree this year. Now, I'm trying to imagine what would have happened if in 2008 I gave a phone call to the president and said, hey, Martin Osborne just graduated, let's put him in charge. So, a little different era, perhaps, a little different era. 50 years ago, 1962. We like to brag because we did get 3 teams to the National Debate Tournament this year, but here's the truth of it. The National Debate Tournament only allows you to qualify 1 team until the early 1970s. And I am confident that if the rules of today had been in place in the 50s and 60s, there would be a lot of years where we might have gotten 3 teams to the National Debate Tournament. Because in 1962, 50 years ago, in 10 days, we managed to have a team qualified in the National Debate Tournament, going undefeated districts. We had a team win the Heart of America, a major national tournament, a young team, freshman team, I believe. And we had a team compete on national television against the University of Notre Dame, which is, of course, the one that got the most attention for the entirety of the university. And since Ken Keller is with us tonight, we want to give him another round of applause. Thank you, sir. "40 years ago, the season was opening, and that season would lead to at the end of the year to the first appearance in the semifinals of the National Debate Tournament with Tom Black and John Jackson. It took a little while for that pairing to develop into the way that it was going to be, but that season started 40 years ago. 30 years ago, the program was in the middle of a transition from NDT to CETA, and as far as I can tell, that transition had just begun in the fall of 1982 and was largely complete sometime in 1983 and 1984. 20 years ago, Spike decided to dust off the coat and dust off the pipe and return to coaching for a year, and the debaters responded by winning the CETA National Tournament, Jarman and Wolf right up there, 20 years ago. And 10 years ago, my former boss, John Fritsch, ended up heading to the University of Northern Iowa and put into place a series of coaching changes that have also had a significant effect in some ways on the program. I think we have a ton of things to celebrate, and I love that this is happening in the year 2012 because this program has such an amazing legacy. Now, for you all's entertainment this evening, we decided to do what we did in 2007, which is to have a public demo debate. And honestly, we've been kicking around ideas for this demo debate for a little while, trying to figure out what to do. I turned on the TV the other day and saw it come on. It says Fox News, Fair and Balanced. So I said, well, I'm going to check this out. So I watched what Fox News interpreted Fair and Balanced to me. And after watching it for about 5 or 10 minutes, I had a perfect idea. We're going to have a fair and balanced public debate between the C team from the year 2001 on the affirmative and 2 of the program's NDT semifinalists on the negative. And we're going to talk about wine. So at this point, I want to go ahead and invite up the debaters. We'll start with the team on the affirmative. Jared Kinder. Jared debated for us for 4 years, graduated in the year 2011. He is now in law school at the University of Arkansas down in Fayetteville. Jared debated his last year with Joel Reed. Joel debated 1 more year. Joel actually qualified as the 13th to the NDT in 2012, but these 2 debated together in 2011. And so they're going to be on the affirmative, arguing that, resolve, that wine is at the root of all, or nearly all, problems. Defending the concept of wine, we're going to have Martin Osborne, NDT and CETA semifinalist and top speaker in both from 2008. And 1973 NDT semifinalist and program benefactor Tom Black. The room has it might know a thing or 2 about wine. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand off the phone to the first affirmative. Who's the first affirmative? I'm going to hand it off to Jared Kinder. Here we go.
I'll show you some signals from the back.
I think if we talk too much, then it's not.
Try to debate good, okay, Tom?
Well, I guess I'd first like to thank Dr. Stanton, Liz Dudash, and Eric Morris, 3 of my favorite professors. Also, Mrs. Walters. You all were great influences in the Missouri State. I'd also like to thank the Smarts for joining us tonight. 2 former Arkansas law grads. It's great to see you here in the positions you hold now. You know, we'll take sue me. I'd love to see you guys here. All right, so we're all here for one reason, to celebrate this great program that we've all come to love and respect. And I think it's great that everyone's come out tonight. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Morris for being my coach, my mentor, my friend, and for bringing us all together. So on to tonight's debate. The topic: wine is the root of all evil or all problems. What? You look around, you don't believe me? Well, I asked the audience to take a look around the room after that wine tasting and answer my question. Still not convinced? Well, Joel and I hope we can shed some light on that issue. Observation 1, inherency. Wine sales are at the highest point in history, and sales continue to skyrocket despite this global recession. The IRI states, the midst of the global recession, with the gloomy report after another gloomy report, have shot through the roof. But wine sales are continuing to go even higher. Table wine sold to the U.S. food and drug stores increased 6.4%, and champagne 39.5%. The data reverses a series of steady and bad news delivered in previous reporting periods. Now you folks might be asking yourselves, what is the big deal? I enjoy the occasional glass of red every night, but what you fail to realize, with every glass of wine you drink, you are contributing to the destruction of American society. The American Institute of Medicine and Sciences estimates that each year alcoholism costs society anywhere from $40 to $60 billion. This is due from lost production, health and Medicare costs, motor vehicle accidents, violent crime, social programs, and all the responses to alcoholism. Thus, Joel and I stand resolved that white is the root of all problems and endorse the following brand text. The United States federal government should substantially increase restrictions on domestic wine production. Observation 2, the grapes of wrath. This thing is not working. Observation 2, the grapes of wrath. Wine dates back a millennia. The earliest known production of wine occurred in Georgia around 7000 BC. Now this is roughly around the same year that Spike won the NGT for the first time. Since that time, wine has been the root of all problems. Whether it is Reuben tumbling down Stanton's staircase last night, the decline of the Roman Empire, the 2008 financial meltdown, wine has always been there, looming ominously in the background. In 2007, the oldest winery in the world was discovered in a cave in southern Armenia. This breakthrough case was a greatly expanded our understanding of what can only be described as the pure evil of wine. In addition to the world's oldest winery, archaeologists also unearthed the world's oldest shoe. This tells us that wine is responsible for not only the drunken missteps of world leaders, but the most missteps that are taken at all. We have on good authority that Adolf Hitler, Kim Jong-il, Pol Pot, Laura Bush, and Mussolini all happen to be wearing shoes. Also that guy who stole $400,000 from the Missouri River. He's obviously pairing for the greatest travesty of all, Ozzy or Martin Osborne's cock collection. That brings us to the third observation, bottle rockets. A cursed curtailing of production of U.S. wine will stop society's biggest problem, that being terrorism. Now, it might seem like a stretch, but we claim to be solving for it. Not a domestic terrorist like my opponent Martin Osborne. We are talking international terrorism, much similar to that of the CIA accused former debater Michael Carney of when he checked out all those books researching nuclear proliferation. Wine terrorism, you ask? Well, it's a stretch, but we have a link. Time magazine writes, too much wine to disown can cause violent behavior, but few have gone as far as the grape growers of France's, I'll have to ask Tom's help in pronouncing this, blank region. Hurting from overproduction and cheap imports, a small group of local wine growers have resorted to wine terrorism. On July 26th, police arrested a vineyard farmer from a region for production of and possession of illegal explosives. He also admitted, police say, to authoring the failed bombings last year beside the Tour de France. Claiming responsibility, a clandestine group known as the CRAV, or Regional Committee of Viticulture Action, CRAV members or independent sympathizers have repeatedly carried out bombings and other acts of vandalism. Did any of you actually know this existed? In mid-July, CRAV logos were discovered spray-painted at Narbonne Agriculture Collective, whose vandalized vats had drained nearly 132,000 gallons of wine. This is an estimated loss for the France economy of $450,000. They also sent a video to the newly elected president demanding assistance to the region's grape growers, or else blood will flow from the streets of Paris. Now, you might be asking, how could we solve for this? But this is dire action. It's literally try or die for the affirmative team today. Without U.S. imports of wine, international wine terrorists will have no reasons to act. So by curtailing, we'll be solving for this. With this in mind, I can only ask for affirmation, and I stand open for cross-examination.
Hi, Jared. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great.
Have you had any wine?
Actually, no. I was
that's
too
just-
nervous to get drunk and talk in front of these people. They're all drunk, so it works.
Are they? I hope so. We're kind of counting on that, actually.
Yeah.
So your first argument was about how was about wine sales. So maybe you're unaware, but Tom Black is an internationally known wine collector.
Really?
He's also a kind of a millionaire salesman. So I'm not. Are you sure this is the way you want to start this wine sales?
I don't believe I was actually talking about sales. That was my inherent barrier is that people are drinking wine unlike any other.
This is your argument that wine sales are through the roof.
Yes,
but wine
it's
is still
the
crashing
reason
the
why
economy.
reason why we need to take action now. Why it is so important.
Why is that exactly?
Why
you
is
say
it?
that wine's been around since before Whole Spicer.
Yes,
so.
but the impact is obvious. It's terrorism.
We're talking about a lot of time here. I mean, where?
When? Any day now, these CRAV people could be attacking, even the president of France, it says. Blood will flow
I'm
through
sorry,
Paris once
okay,
we
so
take action.
I'm waiting. So what's the problem?
What's the problem?
Yeah, what
We don't want terrorism. Nobody in this room wants terrorism.
in France?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, on my flow, you make another argument here about. Actually, Actually, we weren't sure about this. Tom wanted me to make sure. Was it pocket rockets or was it?
We were just giving them funny names, kind of like the grapes of wrath, bottle rockets, wine jokes.
Right, bottle rockets.
Bottle
You're against
rockets,
drinking and fireworks. So does the plan ban the 4th of July?
No. Actually, the plan endorses everything all-American. We are going to take the stance that wine is not an all-American drink.
Why is that? Because it ruins the French economy? Sounds American.
It definitely is a European drink, and that Americans drink beer. It's inherently American to drink beer.
No further questions.
That was good. See why you got top speaker.
You can still see.
Well, whenever I talk about wine, I always the negative in today's debate. We'd like to, how's that go, Jim? We'd like to argue that the problems aren't inherent, significant. They have workability issues. There's dangers and disadvantages, and of course, the plan will never solve the problem, right? So we'd like to talk first. Whenever I think about wine, though, really, I think about some of the benefits in my own personal life. I remember I picked up an older woman on the highway in New Mexico one time when I was married. I put a bag of wine there in the front seat over by where she got in, and she said, "What's in the bag?" I said, "Oh, well, that's a bag of wine I got from my wife." And she looked out the window the longest time, and then she looked back at me and she said, "Good trade." So, in my own personal life, I've seen a lot of benefits from wine. But, you know, we were trying to think, and basically we agree with everything that the affirmative said. However, what they said really is insignificant in comparison to the advantages of wine. And we just like to submit there are 4 advantages to leaving wine in the lives of all Americans. One is it prevents you from being lost. You know, Plato said, no, Plato didn't say it was actually Jim Anderson. He said, "There must be always wine and fellowship, or we are truly lost." And I think his experience at Dartmouth, my sophomore year, perfectly illustrates that if he had been drinking wine instead of beer that night, perhaps some of you don't realize he broke the record for consumption of beer at the Dartmouth debate tournament. The previous record being 33 Dixie cups, Jim consumed 43. And he was totally disoriented, lost, and ended up in White River Junction, Vermont. And I would submit, if it was wine, he would have never been lost. Secondly, I'd suggest that wine is a gift from the gods. And Cardinal Richelieu said, if God forbade drinking, would he have made wine so good? And Plato did say, nothing more excellent or valuable than wine was ever granted by the gods to man. And Benjamin Franklin, you've heard of him, right? Wine is constant proof that God loves us and loves to see us happy. We'd suggest thirdly, that wine improves our culture and our lifestyle. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, a man will be eloquent if you give him good wine. And it makes sense to me that they drank no wine based on that first affirmative. And I noticed he was a little uptight. William Shakespeare made that clear. A man cannot make him laugh. That's no marvel, he drinks no wine. And of course, Pliny the Elder said, in vino et veritas. In wine there is truth. And we found none in the first And perhaps Robert Mondavi said it best. He said, wine has been a part of civilized man for some 7,000 years. It is the only beverage that feeds the body, soul, and spirit of man, and at the same time stimulates the mind. And finally, we would suggest that wine is a universal healer. And we turn to the jury judging Bordeaux wines submitted under the 1855 classification in the World's Fair of Paris. They said the wines of Bordeaux give tone to the stomach while leaving the mouth fresh and hand clear. More than one invalid, abandoned by the doctors, has been seen to drink to the good old wine of Bordeaux and return to health. And Alexander Fleming said, if penicillin can cure those who are ill, surely wine can bring the dead back to life. And my grandfather, a famous Irishman, said, anything that can't be healed with wine or butter can't be healed. And finally, an old Italian man I met sitting on the street in New York said, one barrel of wine can work more miracles than a church full of saints. I would say to you that 90% of the money I've made in my life I spent on wine, women, and song. I basically wasted the other 10%.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Talking about potential topics, and I noticed on the email tag, the bottom, it said the name of your business, Bank Sourcing. That sounds a little familiar to an organization we're all been hearing about in the news, Bain Capital. Now, my question for you, I'm wondering, since because of this, can we see your tax returns for the past 10 years?
Of course.
I think these people have a right to know.
Right. It assumes I filed.
What did you have to hide?
Nothing.
All right. Well, while we're on the topic, can we see your long-term birth certificate too? Anyways, is this yours? Is this you were responsible?
Yes, I am.
It's a book.
It's a great book.
The author is Tom Black. This is your reasons for business success. All right, I'm going to read from here. This is about how America sandbox. Right now, we find ourselves frustrated as Americans. I've been frustrated 3 times in my life as an American.
4 now.
Oh. Alright, so these 4 times. Vietnam, President Nixon's behavior, and the prevalence of wine that is destroying our country. You seem to be conceding our point.
Yeah, I admit it.
Okay.
Just sell more books.
Do you have any further evidence you want to offer anybody?
You gotta get it yourself.
Thank you so much. I'll echo Jared's earlier comments. We're very grateful to speak in front of such a distinguished crowd. It's really been great to get to know you. But kind of, I wanted to start by also telling a story. There were actually 3 men that were on a wine conquest. They were out looking for a new place to plant a vineyard, and they were wandering actually through the Amazon. There was an American, a Frenchman, and an Italian, and they all happened to be kidnapped by a group of rebels. They were taken hostage, and they were basically forced to sit in a small hut where they were told that they were going to cut out their innards and make their skins into boats. A bit frightened, they were asked for their last request. The Italian came in and he said, all I want is a good glass of wine, and if you'll put poison in it, that's how I'd like to die. I don't want to experience any pain. So he drank it and quickly died. The Frenchman, seeing that this worked, came in and did the exact same thing. Like any good Frenchman, died without a fight. The American came in and said, well, that seems kind of silly to me. I think what I would like is my last request is a 4th. A bit bewildered, the natives went out and they brought back a 4th. When they returned, the American began stabbing himself all over his body with it. When asked what he was doing, he said, well, so much for your boats, huh? See, the American but much like the natives' new boats, the negative team has some serious holes in their strategy. We're going to talk about a couple of those holes, and the most important one is that we suspected, knowing these fine gentlemen, they would come up here and tell you all about the wonderful benefits of wine. Oh, wine is great, it does all sorts of things. We think this is largely irrelevant. The question of this resolution is about whether or not wine is the root of all problems. The shoe example from the 1AC is a pretty humorous way of pointing this out. The question is, can we trace the problem back to wine? If we can trace it back to wine or something like shoes, then I think that we've done our job as the affirmative. Sure, there are plenty of benefits to wine. Wine does great things. I've had several glasses of wine tonight. But the point isn't whether wine is good or bad. The question is only whether or not it is the root of all problems. As we've already established, it is the root cause of the financial crisis. We have some evidence here actually from NBC that while the disgraced American financier Bernie Madoff languishes in Burner Medium Jail, North Carolina, authorities have announced that they will be auctioning off his extensive wine and spirits collection. The prices may be watered down, but even so, a box of 12 bottles of Bordeaux and a bunch of other French words that I can't pronounce, 1982, 1998, will cost an estimated $48,000 to $60,000. Now, obviously, Bernie Madoff had to embezzle all of that money so that he could pay for all of this ridiculously priced wine. And I think that we're going to get out a lot of their offense here, and all that they have to do is come up with some problem that we can't trace back to wine. That's their only job is the negative. If they're able to do that, then we'll concede the debate and just enjoy a couple of glasses with them. But I think that they're going to have a hard time doing this. See, all problems have some root in wine. This morning I couldn't find my keys. That was because last night at Dr. Stanton's house I had several glasses of wine. What color socks am I going to wear? It's all about considerations of spillage whenever you're going to a wine event. This year's college debate resolution is about energy, and when we think about energy, obviously any energy solution would have to deal with wine. We'd have to deal with the production of wine and the amount of money that goes into not only the processing and creation. I don't really understand all of the science. We'll defer to Tom Black on that one. But it all traces back to wine. Wine is at the root of all problems, and that is the only question for this debate. Thank you very much, and I'll cede the rest of my time for negative preparation.
As an outsider, how do you feel about the human race? While you're going through this, have you ever, are you familiar with the term limerick? Yeah, I just have a question. Have you ever heard this limerick? There once was a couple named Kelly. They walked around belly to belly because in their haste they used library paste instead of petroleum jelly. Are you familiar with this limerick? Do you know any songs at all? I mean, oh, you do? Well, would you mind giving us the first few lines of a song or two you know?
Just any song?
Yeah, go
But, trying to think of the...
Okay, Joe, that's all right. You can lie to me, I know. I'm easy. But let me ask you another question. Did you realize that tonight we were celebrating the legacy of Missouri State debate? And yeah, and part of that legacy are limericks and songs and tradition. Did you realize this?
I did.
And yet you don't have a song for us. I'm a little embarrassed by that, aren't you? Aren't you, Spike? Yeah, I thought so.
You can keep going if you like.
Thank you very much, Joel.
Weird.
Sure
It is a...
You want something to stand on?
Yeah, we
It is a pleasure to debate here. It's great to speak in front of all you and see debaters from Missouri State history. It's truly a pleasure for me. I drove in today. I couldn't wait to get here. It's also very exciting to debate with Tom Black. I've known him for so long. It's really fun to get up here and debate these guys who I barely know at all. So I'd like to begin by pointing pointing out that there's just no response at all to the fact that Tom traded his wife for a box of wine. I really don't understand how they expect to win this debate without responding to this huge advantage. I mean, we've got evidence from a woman in New Mexico. Is there really any way to match that? I don't know where the economic studies come from. He tells a story about three people. It's nice to see that Joel has some appreciation for history. The fact of the matter is that not only is wine the past, but wine is also the future. Wine is an instinct. According to Andre L. Simon, that joy is that wine is of sunshine. Wine is not a drug. It's never a craving. It seldom becomes even more habit. It is an instinct, a man's time-honored joy. Now, I've been drinking wine for about 30 total minutes of my life. And I can back this up with full fervor that this is a true instinct that I've been missing out on. They set the standard that we must be able to trace the problems of society back to wine. Well, I think it's blaming wine a bit much to point the finger for Bernie Madoff in the entirety, I'd say. It's also true that it's impossible to do this tracing process without wine. We have a piece of evidence here that indicates that, in fact, wine does not distort, but it clarifies perspective. It seduces in a way that is worthy of being human. It's the only way we know how to decipher information. It's literally impossible to trace this if you haven't already begun to drink. Certainly all of you feel that you have a special connection with history in this very moment. I'd like to rest my case right here, but I think everyone wants a little more entertainment. But it really does just go to show just how clouded the vision of the opposition is. He makes this argument, I guess, about how he lost his keys last night. We already have a response to this. They're not responding to our evidence from Anderson, who indicates that wine solves lostness by fostering fellowship and community. I don't think wine is the problem. I think he just doesn't have enough friends, maybe. He also indicates that these keys were lost after just a little wine. Maybe he didn't have enough wine. Always a possibility. Always a possibility. I don't have a response to the Richelieu, Plato, Franklin. These are smart guys. They all swear wine comes from above, a gift from the gods. If the topic is about the root of all evil, are they really blaming God for all evil? It's just something heavy to drop on us, you know? It's fun here.
It's just something heavy to drop on us.
I'm trying to speak to this older audience.
Yeah.
Even if there are certain pitfalls to wine, we can all rest assured because it's also the universal healer. You remember the anecdotal evidence about some guy going to the doctor and drinking his way out? That's good stuff. Whatever's going to happen, you've got wine right there. We've even got evidence that says wine can bring people back from the dead. I mean, what are we worried about? Just keep drinking. We've got Tom's Irish Grandpa. We've got some random guy from Italy and on the street in New York. I think we can trust these people. They have evidence from economists. When was the last time you really trusted one of them? I'd be happy to answer this question if you have.
Just a couple. Fortunately, most of our questions are premised on the idea of you not drinking wine.
Oh, okay.
Now, you're one of the, obviously, most successful debaters, not just of Missouri State, but the last 10 years, top speaker of both CETA and the NDT. That's a pretty big accomplishment. And we were wondering just how many tournaments you were able to win during the course of your tenure at Missouri State.
I would remember better if I hadn't just taken that drink. What was the question? I'm sorry.
See, we brought these trophies here, and we thought it was, you know, a little uncomfortable if you hadn't maybe won any tournaments as an undergraduate, despite being top speaker at CETA and the NDT. Maybe we should. You
don't see the trophies? We both are tournament winners.
You all won tournaments? What tournaments did you win?
The Emporia Junior Varsity Tournament.
Yeah. Thank you. We got against Emporia.
So you won the Missouri State tournament. Sounds like that.
Mark, if you're not first, you're last.
That's all the questions that we have.
Your only question is to
W.C. Fields said, "It was a woman that drove me to drink, and I never even wrote to thank her." And I remember the great pirate captain who, when his crew came to him, having discovered 2 British frigates sailing up over the horizon, said, "We will sink those to the bottom of the ocean. Bring me the red wine." And he took the red wine and he splashed it all over his shirt, and after the battle was over, they had sunk the 2 British frigates. And the crew came to him and said, "Captain, Captain, why did you ask for the red wine?" He said, "Because if I was wounded in battle, if you saw blood on my shirt, you might have gotten discouraged, and the tide of battle would have turned against you." And they go, "You are the greatest captain." And to finish the story, about 5 weeks later, 5 Spanish galleons sail up over the ocean into view, and they run to the captain, and the crew says, "Captain, Captain, what do we do?" And he sees those 5 Spanish galleons out over the horizon. He says, "Bring me the brown pants." But don't let that take away from the beginning of the story. About the red wine. That's very important. You know, one thing that bothers me is that we never seem to get back to the advantages that the negative or disadvantages of the affirmative proposal that were so carefully outlined. My speech, and so wonderfully supported by, what's his name? Jim Lowell. Did you put wine up here? No, you took it with you. Okay, so anyway, my point is, I think we need a response to the fact that God has given us wine. I think we need a response to the fact that wine is a cultural advantage and brings out the best in men. Certainly eloquence in speaking, not displayed by the negative deed. And I think that we need a response to the idea that wine keeps you from getting lost. Jim looks a little dazed now. He has been drinking wine, but you know, unless we can get a response, we're going to wonder where will Jim be in another hour? Yeah. No, that will live with Jim as long as I'm alive, Don's alive, Skip's alive, you know. Yeah. And then finally, I think we need an answer to the fact that wine will bring out the best in all of us. Some of you may be trying to trade your wives tonight. And I want you to remember that when we ask you to vote.
All right, Mr. Black wants a response.
Mr. Black.
He pretty much hasn't provided a legitimate argument for us to respond to. He's simply been pulling quotes off of Tom Black's quote of the day. You don't follow on Facebook, you should. It exists, he loves quotes. But these kids, we have quotes too. Fran Lebowitz once said, "Great people talk about ideas, average people talk about things, and small people talk about wine." With that, let's talk a little bit more about wine. The negative team has failed to grasp the essence of the 1AC. It is not our goal to completely rid the world of wine. We are simply here to just restrict the sale of it. Because after all, if the world had been rid of, there was no wine in the world, what would Dunlap carry in his travel cooler to parties? I beg Mr. Osborne of the 2NR, his last chance, to present the affirmative team with one disadvantage that links to the plan text. At this point in the debate, there is absolutely no logical reason you would not vote affirmative. We have shown that wine literally links to almost every evil in the world.